We just got news that the JFK Files have finally been released. It's about 80,000 files, so let's try to unpack that. Are we going to find anything new, or is it just going to be business as usual? We're going to go through that and a whole lot more, and I have a special guest with you all today, right here on the Political Pulpit. We're so glad that you decided to join us once again for another epic episode of the Political Pulpit. We'll be right back.
And unity, and that the church would find new zeal and commitment to the mission and purpose of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
You're a liar! You're a liar!
Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart.
Well, it's that time again, ladies and gentlemen, for the Political Pulpit. I'm your host, Josh Navarrete, and it's so good to be right here back with you on the program. We're coming to you live right on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and now Parler, and we're so excited for the new platform, Only Source Network. You can view us at watch.osn.tv and even use my name, Josh, as a promo code to sign up there. You can watch exclusive content from End Time Ministry, OSN Network, the Political Pulpit, and other guests that are being added daily. We promise you're going to be full of content, full of information, biblical worldview, all the things that you could ever ask for right there on one spot. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors at BlinkBed, at blinkbed.com. It's the only mattress certified by the American Arthritis Foundation. It's like sleeping on a cloud. All your aches and pains will suddenly go away because you're getting a full night's rest of sleep. Dream great, sleep on a cloud, and feel great the next morning. Thank you to our sponsors at blinkbed.com. You can use promo code PULPIT24 for an exclusive 10% off on any purchase, on any order that you get right there at blinkbed.com. Well, we're back on the program here on Political Pulpit, this time with a special guest, my friend, Eric Sanderson. And he's a bit of a unicorn, we'll call him, because he does a lot of great things.
Thank you.
He's been in media in so many different ways. He's a business strategy consultant, so he's great in the business world. He's got a great business mind. But not only that, he has a great radio and media voice. He belongs on media, and that's why we have him today, because we know that his mind, his gift is everything that we need in this world today. So thank you for joining us, Eric.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're just talking about so many different things today as we're prepping for the show, and there's a lot of news that's happening. I don't want to get too formal. I want to be more relaxed on this show because I think it's important that people see who we truly are. They're starving for media that's real and that's not so polished. What do you think?
I would agree. I think one of the big challenges we have, obviously, is everything is so produced, right, that we get through the mainstream, is that we really filter out the quality and the true depth and the meaning of what's happening in the world. It becomes, altered and tailored to fit a specific narrative. And regardless of where you sit in the political spectrum, we get a very produced view.
Yeah, and I always tell people that when you go for an overproduced video or edits, I'm in the technical space in media because it's what I've done for so long, but I found that a lot of the overly edited, overly produced video is just not attractive anymore. People want real people, real conversations, and hopefully that's what we can bring them.
Yep, absolutely.
So tell us a little, before we dive into the news, let's talk to the audience about, so we have an audience, small audience on YouTube, let's be honest, but we're actually in different areas. I was talking about Parler. Parler is exploding, by the way, so I encourage everybody to go to Parler, download the Play TV app when you can, and as soon as you get content up there, I mean, people are seeing it and people are consuming it really quickly, so I encourage everyone, go to Parler. Also, the other thing too is that they have their own servers. They're not going to be censored because they're in control of their own content, and I love that. You asked me earlier, what can we talk about? What can we talk about? I said, guess what? We can talk about whatever we want because we won't be censored. So we're going to have a good time with that. But my point really is that we want to make sure that you all can view us on Parler, OSN.TV, YouTube, Rumble, and X, and all the places. But going back to our conversation, we had some things come up earlier about the JFK Files, which you exploded with information. You're like, did you hear about this? Hear about that? I want to get into all that, so we're about to. But just give us a quick insight about who Erik is.
Well, okay, thank you, first of all, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I remember, I reflect back when we first talked about this, and I remember we were in a car, we were in Washington, D.C., and we were getting ready to go have lunch.
Oh, yeah,
and I remember you asked me, and you said, have you ever been on radio? And yes, I have. I 6 years in radio, and I also hosted talk shows, and I would have guests on, and we would talk about current events and these sorts of things. It's been a few years, right? And so, but yeah, so it was 6 years doing that. I was working other jobs at the time. For the last 25 years, I have been a business strategy consultant. I work with exclusively in the commercial construction industry, so large construction projects that are either commercial, but most of them are actually government and federal projects. I work with contractors and government agencies around large projects that they're building, and I help them with defining and executing their strategy. So it's very, very niche-y type of work, but it does afford me a unique perspective that I engage with both the commercial side of industry, and a very important, critical industry in our country, as well as government entities and how they go about executing their work and how they procure contractors and how they execute what they're doing. And so I get exposed to a lot of different angles, and I have the absolutely wonderful position of being the party in the middle, sort of the third party, not beholding to any one group, but I get exposed to the inner workings. So it's a unique perspective.
That's so unique, and it makes me wonder, as you're telling me all this, does it give you a different perspective on what you see happening in the world today when it comes to government spending? It's funny because we have people that probably don't run businesses as good as you do, and they're running our country.
100%.
So are you able to identify those things and you see it and it just drives you crazy? I can imagine it drives you crazy.
All the time. So it's interesting. Again, I work with a lot of agencies as well as private industry, and I do see varying levels of competence, right?
Okay.
And in the public sector, and I say public as in government, there are varying levels of competence. There are environments where it's easier to hide incompetence in government. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
Everybody works in all kinds of different environments, and in your job, I can guarantee you work with some people that you're like, man, I wish they were better. I wish they were competent. Here they are, and so I'm going to have to work with them. That exists everywhere. It's just easier to hide in a government environment, and it's easy to continue in a path without true accountability. At some point, if I don't help my boss, now I work for myself now, but in years past I've worked for a lot of other people, and if I'm not adding value in that process, I'm at risk. Right. That's always the way it is. I'm at risk. A lot of times in the public environment, if we don't add value, we kind of are able to hide that. In addition to that, what we find very frequently is that somebody is safe as long as they don't make waves. Right? Yeah. So they may be very effective in their job as long as they don't make waves, and then they're kept. Somebody could be ineffective in their job as long as they're not making waves. They're not getting on the radar screen, and so therefore they're not at risk. Unfortunately, I have to say I see a lot of inefficiency, a profound amount of inefficiency in government. I see plenty of people in government working really, really hard, and their heart is in the right place. They do the right things every day. Their mind is focused on doing the best they can with what they have to work with. And then I see people who exploit the system. They exploit inefficiencies. They leverage it for personal gain. Sometimes, I will tell you this. I don't get exposed to something I would characterize as illegal that I'm aware of. Wow. Because I would immediately say, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm not going to work with you guys if I see that. But what I do see is incompetence. Yeah. So when some of the things that you're saying reminds me of this, is these spending bills. Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind, the first thing that you said was that there's people that don't make waves. Right. So that they don't get seen. Yep. But then it seems like they're getting really good at sliding these little things in these spending bills. They do. So that we can't see them. Yep. And you get a politician that doesn't make waves, but he kind of signs off on these small little deals to get money sent to, I don't know, the Congo for transgender, education or something like that. And it's only, I don't know, $50 million, something crazy. We can't prove it. We don't know if that money gets funneled behind the scenes, but it makes you wonder,
Are they incompetent? Are they sneaky? Or are they trying to hide behind the darkness of spending bills and other things, so they don't get seen? But I think people like yourself, and what I hope to do is that we have these conversations so that people that don't understand these things wake up and hold their congresspeople and their senators accountable. Like, know who you're voting in office so that the right people get in and don't do the things that they're doing. So I don't know. I just feel like, unfortunately, there's always going to be corruption in anything. I mean, any sort of like, you add people to the recipe, and there's going to be a little bit of corruption some way, somehow. But it's important that people are aware of it and see it. And with great minds like you, it's like you don't have to go very far to see that something's up. You know. So I don't know. You tell me. What do you think about what you've seen? Do you feel like we're headed in the right direction? Do you feel like all the changes that are happening, does any of it raise concern to you?
No.
That's good. That's good.
First of all, I believe 100% with what's happening, say, in the last, I'm going to sort of put it in some bookends on it, last 2 months. I think it's all movement in the right direction. If, I'm going to, kind of play devil's advocate. If we're making a catastrophic mistake on something, so say, I'm going to use an example, say, President Trump decides we're just going to cut out the FDA entirely. We're going to eliminate them as an agency. If that is a catastrophic mistake, industry will respond. They'll take advantage of it, but also the public will rise back up and say, look, this is not right. They will lobby for, a policing type of an agency to do that, and that will come back onto the screen, right? But in that process, they will have eliminated a lot of inefficiency and waste and fraud that exists. And so I'm playing devil's advocate if that's a mistake. But the reality is, anybody in those industries, they know there's inefficiency in this stuff. The only argument for protecting it is because there's benefit from it. That's it. Because you and I, as consumers, we deal with this all the time. Okay, let's pause. Your camera went out. Can you hold that thought? Of course. Don't forget it. No, just keep it going, because then I can trim it out. I was hoping I didn't have to edit. That happens.
Don't forget. Well, we could just keep going. So just stay on that thought. Let's keep talking.
Oh, okay, sure. You and I, we encounter environments and agencies all the time, and we generally like to think that people are doing things for the right reasons. Right? And again, I'll just take the FDA, and I don't have a bone to pick with them at all. But we would typically look at them and say, they're there protecting the consumer. Right? That's their job, and we want to believe that they're protecting the consumer. And I would like to know that whether it's the food or the medicine or a process, that's been evaluated, analyzed, and it's deemed safe. And so, I feel better about that. But we can easily see, and anybody that gets on the inside of that will know immediately that's not always the case. There are agendas to be served. There are people who are acting on behalf of their, quote, constituents, right? They're people who have a vested interest in a certain outcome, and so they act on behalf of them. And so sometimes we might see, and it happens all the time, where maybe somebody is suffering a particular ailment, and there's a promising medicine that might be able to help them. And it's been proven, hey, this really works. I say proven, but maybe not to quote the FDA standards. But the FDA standards are subject for discussion. I'm not going to qualify whether certain tests are appropriate or not appropriate, but we know that it takes a lot of money and a lot of time to push through certain drugs to get approvals. There are a lot of promising drugs that can serve a need that never get the opportunity. They don't get the light of day. They're pushed down, they're denied. And then you see drugs that we know have pretty significant and severe side effects that are approved, and not just approved, but pushed out in very mass quantities.
And they cause a lot of problems.
They cause a lot of problems. Yeah, absolutely. And then we, as consumers, look at it and go, well, I guess this is right because the FDA said so. But then the physical proof isn't there to support it. Like we look at it and say, no, people are still dying, or that medicine, the side effects are so profound that we should not continue that course. We should explore different medicines, but yet those other alternatives are not given the light of day. They're not given opportunity. And so what we have is an agency not existing to promote discovery. What they end up doing is they act as a bottleneck and it's sort of a container to limit progress.
So based off of that, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to, because we're now getting into the health industry, which is very important to me because I got small kids, you know,
Yeah,
and so we're thinking differently on how we do healthcare.
Yes.
We even think different now on how we visit our doctors, because it's like this narrow-minded thinking about prescription drugs,
Yep.
about how you treat everyone.
Yep.
It's like a blanket treatment for every person, right?
Yeah.
So you and I are different, but how could a doctor treat us exactly the same?
Yep.
And they're trained not to they're trained to think a certain way because of this. I don't know if it's because of the FDA or whatever it is, you know, the health care. I can't. What is the World Health Organization? But what's the United States version of it? I can't remember. It's not a, yeah.
You're drawing a blank.
Tough question for both of us, apparently. But my point is that it's like we're supposed to think a certain way, and now doctors are trained to think a certain way. And if you think anything outside of that, you are a conspiracy theorist. If you have an open mind, or if you try to become liberated on that type of thinking, you're the crazy.
Yep. You know, it's almost like animal husbandry. Right?
Okay.
And I mean that seriously.
Okay.
Is that in the world of animal husbandry and people that manage large herds, you treat the herd as a herd.
Yeah.
And say you got 1,000 head of cattle, there's going to be certain occurrences of certain disease, and so you manage that. But you treat the herd like a herd.
Right.
You don't go in and do a physical assessment of each cow, giving it its own profile, right? So largely you're going to be effective, right? And you might lose a few cows along the path, and you're going to save a bunch, and all that's good. In the human side of it, we as humans, as thinking, feeling creations of God, we expect individual care.
Yeah.
But the medical community treats us like animal husbandry. We are treated as herds. And if I know that out of 100, one person's going to get this type of ailment, and so I'm going to treat the herd for that one ailment. Or maybe that's not frequent enough that I'm not going to concern myself about it. I'm not going to acknowledge it. Where we run into really some challenges is when we see that there's some potential solutions that work for this group of 25 people out of that 100. There's a different solution that works for that group of 25. But it becomes difficult to do multi-management. Like, how do I come up with a solution that's right for you that might be different than what's right for me?
Yeah, that's
so
good.
That's where our medical community does, I think, a very poor job of embracing the differences between humans. And instead, our medical community is trained, right, that we're going to treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
But a piece of that is also going to be in this element that says, if you think independently, if you have an idea that says, hey, I want to do this, well, the doctor is much smarter than you.
Right.
So we always say, do your own research, but the doctor will tell you, don't do your own research,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They'll say, be careful what you read on the internet, because you're going to have every disease out there,
That's
right?
true.
And they will tell you that. They'll say, hey, doctor, I think I'm this. And they're like, don't read what you don't think. So although somebody may be right, they may have discovered something, about themselves that's important. And so our medical community doesn't do a good job of encouraging us to be educated consumers. To be aware of our bodies and to be aware of what works for us and doesn't work for us. Instead, pipe you through, hey, here's what you got, script. I got another guy coming in 10 minutes.
And that script usually causes other issues. So then you're back for another problem.
Yep.
I tell this all the time to my elders in my life is you got to chill out, or especially like even my father-in-law. Like he loves to take what the doctor tells him. So now he comes to me, and I'm no doctor.
Right.
But I try to do as much research as possible. And it's like we have these conversations of, well, you're treating one condition that causes another condition.
Yep.
It's just like this ridiculous domino effect.
Yep.
And now we have sick bodies that are dependent on pharmaceuticals that cause all kinds of problems. And I love the idea of getting rid of commercials for new pharmaceuticals.
I agree.
It's the craziest thing. You can't watch a football game now without some new drug that comes out.
Yep.
It's like the biggest drug cartels in American history
They are.
American companies.
Yep.
It's asinine. It's crazy.
What we treat as symptoms,
Yeah.
we don't treat ailments, and we don't treat diseases. But I feel like this is like old news. Everybody knows this is big business.
Yeah,
it's big business.
it's huge.
And why would I cure something when I can make money off of it for a very long time?
Oh man.
And so I don't have a lot of faith that the oversight that exists in the medical community is leading us in the right direction. We'll treat symptoms. We might make that gas go away, right? We might be able to help your knee feel a little bit better. But in the end, is it a solution that heals your body to where you no longer depend on that system?
Right.
And my guess is going to be that, for the most part, we'll defer back to let's treat symptoms.
Yeah.
If I can, just a quick sort of interesting anecdote. Right now, one of the current hot topics that we're hearing, and RFK Jr. certainly is bringing it front and center, and that's... I
was just going to ask you about it.
Yeah, that's, inoculating against diseases, right? And that's a pretty common thing. I grew up in an Army household. My dad was in the military.
Okay.
So when we went to another country, I was getting shots, right? And that's kind of the way it was. As when I became a parent, sort of like, here's the recommended course I'm drawing a blank on the inoculations that you get, the vaccines.
Vaccines,
sorry, that you would get. And, I remember looking at these, and first of all, when both my son and my daughter were first born, and I remember the doctors were wanting to give them injections minutes after they came out of their mother.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember, fortunately, we were very aligned on that. And it was like, that little baby just barely got some fresh air. I'm not going to be shooting chemicals inside of it. So we actually had to, write a note, have a disclaimer, and have it part of our medical sort of profile for our kids, that when they were born, they were not going to get vaccines, and they didn't get vaccines for about 5 years. But interestingly enough, they didn't suffer from the ailments that they wanted to vaccinate against. But without question, they were treated differently in schools and in other environments. They were just because, that's the unvaccinated kid. Now, in the world of sort of the vaccine conspiracy thing, that's out there, right? Is that you get treated differently. The irony is that the schools that promoted it almost had it backwards. They would treat my child like a carrier of a disease.
That's a good point.
We don't want them with the other kids. They're unvaccinated. It's like, no, you got it a little bit backwards. That kid is the carrier. Mine is the one that's clean.
Right.
And so they just didn't, but yet that stigma that goes with it. But I remember debating with the doctor about it. And there was a particular case where I remember walking in and we had a discussion. The doctor sat down, as they always did, and said, listen, I noticed your child's not current on the vaccinations. We need to have this discussion. And I said, let's have it. Let's go. And, you need to get caught up. And gave me all the reasons. And, I kind of went back with some really basic data, and I said, listen, a lot of these, we already have herd immunity in a number of different ailments that we consider to be, a risk. They don't exist in our society. When kids get those diseases, if they get some of those diseases, measles, mumps, rubella certainly falls in these categories. When they get those diseases, our treatment mechanisms are better. So what we try and do, we vaccinate against a disease that's really not a threat. Right now, there are some absolutely that can be a threat. There's no question. But the reason we developed vaccines is because we couldn't treat the disease. So we had to prevent the disease. In a lot of diseases now, we can we can treat the disease such that it really isn't a killer as it was in the past. But I remember having this discussion, and frankly, we got into the debate of vaccines, are they linked to autism? And that was an interesting debate. And really just bringing some facts. I mean, I remember having several conversations with doctors that they didn't concede the link, but they absolutely conceded that there are irregularities. There are things that aren't fully well explained. Anecdotally, I have known plenty of parents that felt that there was a change in their child after vaccines.
Oh, absolutely.
And that, that to me causes concern, because what it says is, okay, you're treating us like a herd.
Right.
Part of this herd does not respond well to this.
Right.
And so to continue to treat that herd like this is inappropriate, right? And then we have this other aspect of our society. We do a great job of labeling people. We demonize and label people that don't think like us. And so we get pushed into this environment where suddenly I'm a defensive parent who is a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm a loving child that I want my son to be successful. I want my daughter to be successful. And so that's the challenge that we face is in our society. We do sometimes go too far on with kind of a broad-based intention of goodwill. But we get so stuck in sort of what we think is goodwill that we deny other people's opportunity to engage in that.
It's so funny that you bring up goodwill, because at the same time, I feel like goodwill has been tainted by fear. And the reason why is they use fear. I remember when our our youngest was born, and we opted no vaccines, period. We just didn't want to do it. And like you said, the first few minutes after birth, they want to give you vitamin K shot, and they want to give you Hep B.
Yep. And why would you get Hep B?
It's a crazy...
Because if the mother had hepatitis at the time, which you can easily test and say, well, if mom doesn't have hepatitis, we don't need to vaccinate against
absolutely.
Hep B.
So, I remember this specifically. They said if you don't do vitamin K, there's a percentage of babies that die because of blood hemorrhaging in the brain. And I'm saying, so you're telling me that God didn't design the child to be birthed by its mother in a perfect way, because that's how he designed us, right? He's a great almighty king, the God of this universe, made a mistake, so much so that we need a vitamin K shot so we don't bleed to death after birth. It's the most craziest way of trying to get people to take these vaccines. Imagine if you're selling a product, and you know, I've been in e-commerce many times over again, and I would love a deal where I didn't even have to market my product because the hospitals are taking care of it for me. You know, maybe not in medicine, but let's just say they're telling their patients, well, you have to have this blank bed, you know, this bed that we just promoted. I wouldn't have to run commercials because every hospital is requiring... They do the sales for you, and it's an automatic thing. That's what the vaccines are. It's an automatic sale to their customers, and their customers are our children and ourselves. And they somehow got away with marketing vaccines and medicine as a necessity, you know, and making these sales every day, millions at a time. And they're not considering us and you and our kids' health. They're just saying this is how it should be. And I think America's waking up. I think we're finally seeing...
It's important to have voices, right? And so, you know... I can't characterize RFK Jr. as a man, as an individual or his whole life. I just know that right now he's representing a voice. And he's a voice that probably people need to hear. Now, does that mean everything he's saying is right? No. It's creating a voice. It's creating an opportunity to have a dialogue, a very important dialogue about our national health.
That's important to understand. I think, too, if you look at... It's the same topic, but kind of broadening the brush a little bit. If you look at Bobby Kennedy, RFK, he's not a traditional Republican conservative.
No, not at all.
Who would have thought that the Republicans would have got behind a liberal, well, I wouldn't call him liberal in this sense, a moderate Democrat? We would have never thought that, especially you know, after the first 4 years of Donald Trump. Everybody was hard right, ultra MAGA, all the things. You got people like Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, that are now in the White House, where this is more of a sign of unity and reaching across the aisle than we have seen since JFK. Right? So
it's interesting. My observation on that is it's less about what the Republicans are doing to engage them. It's more about what are they seeing that they don't want to be a part of anymore. Look,
that's a good point.
RFK Jr. is from a very staunchly
it's like the Democratic
family,
like legacy,
heritage legacy. I mean, that's really the poster child to a great degree of a family that has been committed to some of the, you know, the liberal values over the years, right? Why would they lose somebody like that? How could you let somebody go, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore?
How crazy and how
My voice
far
is not
off
being
have you
heard.
gone?
And so there's a lot of other people out there that start looking and say, you know what, my voice doesn't have, you know, I'm not being heard. And my constituents aren't being represented. The things that I think are important are not taken serious because I'm being pushed into just do this and don't worry about it, right? And I think there's a lot of leaders, there's a lot of business leaders and political leaders who kind of get tired of that. Now, a lot of people don't want to rock the boat, but there's some that say, I got nothing to lose. Roll.
They're seeing the need not only in the country, but they're seeing that our country is almost at the point of no return. And so they have woken up, whereas I think they were all bought in, like you said, and now it's like, wait a second, we got to do something. And we're going to have to work together to do it. And that's why I love It's like this administration is the Avengers. You know, it's like it's the greatest team that you could ever assemble.
Yeah, that's
right.
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a team, and you know, it is refreshing that they're not afraid to just let's take a chance on something. Again, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
We learn it was a mistake. And then okay, let's put in place some corrections there.
Right.
And of course, you'd have the fear procurers who would say, yes, but all these people are going to die. We're going to, kill off all these people.
Yeah.
You know what? And I'm not saying I'm willing to take that chance, but I have been in that spot where, hey, something happened to me. I didn't have anybody flying my flag. So you know what? I think that we are in we're in too much of a state of dependence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And enablement. We enable a certain path of behavior, and as a society, we've come to expect it without really having an idea of like, hey, I should think for myself. I should make sure I'm making the right decisions, and ultimately, who's responsible for that? Me.
Right.
Because if I make a mistake, I'm the one that suffers the consequences.
Yeah.
Right. If I put that off, interestingly, my government can tell me what to do. But if they make a mistake, who's suffering the consequences?
Right.
Not them.
Right. Man, I'll tell you what. We need the Eric Sanderson show. Sanderson show. It's Sanderson, right?
Sanderson,
why do I keep messing this up?
It's okay.
The Eric Sanderson show. I mean, you have a great mind. You just great insight. I love it. This is awesome. I don't have to do the show by myself.
I've been lucky. I don't want to say lucky. I've been blessed.
Blessed, yeah, you're blessed.
And in my work, I get exposed to a lot of different environments and a lot of different people. And like I said, there's a lot of people doing good work, and they're working real hard, and they're doing things for the right reasons. But you cannot help but I see things.
Sure.
Right. And I think one of the things that allows me to see that is that because I'm not working for anyone in particular.
Yeah.
I have my own business. I play a very specific role in the industry, and I'm not obligated to any one entity.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, if I mess something up, they can fire me, and that's fine because I've been blessed. I have a lot of clients. I have great opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. The life experience you can't take for granted, because what you've learned, what you're doing especially, is working with other businesses and meeting other people. Yep. You get to evaluate what's working and what's not working for them. Yep. And then looking at it at a bigger scope, you see how the country's ran.
Yep.
And you can easily identify the issues, the problems, and the great wins that we're hopefully going to see soon.
Yep.
There's stuff that's happening in the market right now that seems a little bit volatile. I mean, it is volatile. People are scared. Yeah. But what I always say is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. Yeah. You ever do like spring cleaning at your home or your garage or something?
We're doing it right now.
Yeah. So you got to just take everything apart.
Yeah.
You start purging or throwing things away, but you feel like it's never ending, right? And the mess just seems to grow before it actually gets better. I feel like that's where we're at. We're just taking things apart. We're evaluating. We're auditing, which is always hard and not fun. Yeah. And it's a bit of a shakeup, especially in the economy. I think that the economy does have to go through a reset. That reset is not always pretty.
I don't think it's as bad as people think it's going to be.
Okay, good.
I'll be honest. I think the normal cycles that our industries experience, I think that they can be as bad as any other. I don't think that being intentional with a little bit of disruption is going to make it any worse than it's ever been, right? We've seen some pretty significant economic swings that were under the normal protocol.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We've seen recessions. The real estate toilet back in 2008 and 2009. That was a terrible time period. A lot of people lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, hey, we're going to go maybe through some upheavals and some unpredictability coming up. Yeah. But I don't think it's going to be any worse than what we saw back then. A lot of people lost everything, and they filed for bankruptcy. They lost everything, and they had to start from scratch in what was kind of a recessionary time period, right? But yet, out of that, people managed to get back on the other side, and now here we are 15, 16 years later, and 18 years later, and people are like, okay, we can. We're getting there. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be any worse than anything we've already experienced. I think it's an important reset to realign. You mentioned spring cleaning. What happens inevitably with spring cleaning is you're pulling stuff out. You're like, what is this that I've been carrying around? I don't need this thing. I was going to fix this, and make it work again, or I was going to save it for a scrapbook or something like
Yeah.
this. I'm never going to do that. And then get rid of it. And what happens is we give ourselves some mental clarity because we're not carrying baggage. Baggage is heavy. And both at an individual level, as a society, we carry a lot of baggage, and it gets in the way of progress because it clutters our garage.
That's good.
It's important.
Talk about sound bites. You ready for the flood of followers to come your way now after that one? That's awesome. Well, we got a whole lot of news to cover. I want to jump into that in a little bit, but let's give some love to Blink Bed.
Okay.
We have a commercial to run. We'll be right back. Today's episode of The Political Pulpit is proudly sponsored by Blink Bed, the ultimate solution for a good night's sleep. As we navigate the complexities of politics and faith, it's crucial to rest well. Blink Bed offers a revolutionary mattress designed with your comfort in mind. Crafted with cutting-edge technology and the finest materials, it's a sleep experience like no other. Did you know that Blink Mattress is the only mattress certified by the American Arthritis Foundation? Say goodbye to restless nights and wake up rejuvenated, ready to face the day's challenges. Blink Bed is not just a mattress, it's an investment in your well-being. So visit www.blinkbed.com and use code PULPIT24 for an exclusive 20% discount. That's www.blinkbed.com. Because a well-rested mind is a powerful mind. Blink Bed for a sleep experience as enlightened as your political insights. Thank you to Blink Bed at blinkbed.com. Remember to use Pulpit24 as your promo code to get 10% off on an already amazingly priced mattress. Guess what? Blink Bed will not be hurt by the coming tariffs because it's manufactured right here in Arizona and can be delivered right to your door. Boxed, roll packed, and ready to sleep on. So go to blinkbed.com, use promo code Pulpit24. And did you know that you can become a Political Pulpit partner? Thank you to our partners who have already jumped in and believed in us to get the message out, because without you and your help, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you to our partners, but you can do the same at politicalpulpit.com/partner. That's www.politicalpulpit.com/partner. And thanks again to all our partners. We're here with Eric Sanderson, good friend of ours. We should probably mention your wonderful wife.
My wife, Karina Moreno. Yep.
This is a mariachi icon.
She is.
And
it's funny because there's sometimes I don't even know. Right? I'm not even aware of how successful, how known she is. But a Christian mariachi singer. Her family, Dueto Moreno, was very successful mariachi family. She traveled the world. She's been singing since she was 5 years old publicly. That makes it a very long time. I'm not going to say how long, right? But yeah, so she's been very successful and a beautiful voice for both mariachi as well as Christian values, and with messages of faith. And I think to your point, right? I'm always surprised about. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I learn about how she's impacted a lot of people with her music, and it's wonderful to be exposed to it.
And that's the key word. It's the impact.
Yeah.
It's the influence. It's the change that she, through her music and her ministry and her family's legacy, that's brought to many, many lives. You know, it's every once in a while we'll have conversations with like family members or something, and they'll mention the Moreno family, and I'm like, hey, I know them. I know them. So I'll never forget when someone had asked me, I don't know how it happened, but it was with one of the organizations we were working with, and they're like, wait, you know Karina Moreno? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we got to talk to her because, you know, she's been in our family, or they've been in our family household for so many years because they would listen to their music. And I just think that's wonderful. It's an honor to know you both. Karina has actually been on one of our first episodes. Cool. So when we got just started sometime 4 or 5, maybe 6 months ago now. That's probably a little bit longer. Sometime last year. She was so gracious to be on our show, and I thank her for that. Would love to have her on in person this time.
Sure we can work it out.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to jump into a little bit of, well, I wouldn't call it fun, because it's more research, more data analysis, and understanding what's real, what's not real. I want to jump into JFK Files that were released yesterday. And it was been long awaited. Let's go ahead and show my screen. We're here on X, and this is how I like to do it. I like to look at what's happening on X. And right there at the top is JFK Files released. It says CIA, Israel, and conspiracy theories surface. So something to note, when we were looking at this earlier today, you and I, it wasn't titled that.
No.
It was just JFK,
Just JFK
Files.
Files.
And remember what you told me? You're like, hey, did you hear
Yeah.
that there could be some things that are in the inside? And it was something like that.
Yeah.
And so you were kind of already thinking ahead, and now it's trending. 484,000 posts already.
Yeah, and when I saw it earlier, it was 250,000. So it's in real
It's
time.
exploding.
Yeah, we're rolling.
So let me read through this really quick. It says the release of declassified files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy has sparked widespread discussion on social media. Key points of interest include the CIA's request for redactions concerning Israel and allegations of CIA involvement in the assassination. To me, this is mind-blowing. I know that I grew up, watching like Alex Jones and InfoWars and hearing things like this, but you didn't think it was real, but here we are. I mean, these documents are starting to reveal stuff. So it says right here, these documents reveal historical interactions and suggest various motives, including Kennedy's intent to limit Israel's nuclear program, though these remain speculative and part of an ongoing debate. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you have any? I mean, I know it's hard to really know the details, but I'm sure there's some sparks happening.
It's interesting. I obviously not in a position to speak of the specifics of the credibility of it all, but we have this package of documents that comes out, and there are anecdotal pieces here that are important to consider. The first is that there's been a long time reluctance to release them. The only time that anybody or any agency would be reluctant to release something is if it has something compromising.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you lied about me, and the more I hide that, the more I'm going to lend credibility to that. But if you lied about me, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead and say your lie, because I can prove it's a lie, right? Right. So that by itself causes a great deal of concern. And then when you look into what are the environments that are being implicated, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
There's a few of them that are rising to the top right now. And unfortunately, one of them is Israel. And I certainly won't comment on that in any capacity because I don't have facts.
Yeah.
But even in the context of that, it's a paradigm shift in terms of maybe our relationship with Israel, how Israel sees us. And it's something that, we've always honored, right? There's a deep, long legacy of faith and alignment. And that's an important one to preserve. But this is probably also one of those environments where politics gets in the way, of what things should be like. And so it's unfortunate that governments and politics kind of begin to intertwine. So I think that one in particular, it's tough. I hate to say it, I think things that we're going to learn coming up are going to be disruptive. I think they're going to cause us to rethink some things. Yeah. And those aren't comfortable things.
No, they're not. And I think the timing is interesting to me because you would think that by now, many of the people that were in government on both sides or on either side are probably no longer alive.
Yeah,
or they're fairly close to the end of their life. So the timing is interesting because I think, people might have asked, or I'm curious to know why they haven't been released way sooner. Yeah. But maybe this is something that comes up where it's like, okay, no one can really be implicated or charged because they're gone. But what it does do is if there are governments that are involved in an assassination of a president, a sitting president, then there's something truly wrong and scary when it comes to what happens. I mean, I saw somebody post something like this. There was a shooter that was unchecked but watched against JFK and then assassinated before he could be truly questioned or tried.
Right.
The exact same thing just happened to President Donald Trump.
Yep.
We know nothing about this shooter. Yep. He almost got away with it. They still would have shot him. It was a death sentence on his behalf. He was one slight turn away from ending everything we know and all the hope that we were hoping for. Why does this seem so similar? Yep. Those are questions that Americans are asking, and I don't know if that we're going to find. It's a lot of documents.
There's a lot of stuff to go through, and again, it's important to base judgments
Yeah.
on facts,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, a lot of facts sort of disappear. And as you'd already articulated, as people die off, and sort of people that were involved and that had direct knowledge, they're no longer around. And you bring up a good point: is that we can't. It's hard to hold somebody accountable, right? So, but I think the risk that we're going to see that's going to get exposed is it's not about any one individual. It's broader and it's groups. And so while that individual may be gone who committed a very specific crime, what we'll probably get exposed to is that there are certain groups that were party to it that endorsed it and covered it for a period of time. And I'm not just talking about, I don't know the situation with Israel, and I'm not going to jump into that.
Sure.
But there are other parties. So suddenly, again, my thought is, why would we hide these that long? Honestly, put them out. And I realize, well, I don't know. If in fact everything was clean and above board, then why weren't these released, after the shooter was, assassinated, right? Why didn't we see that? But
makes you wonder too, how can they generate that many documents? 80,000. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I think we even saw some documents that are in the 90s.
Yeah.
With JFK Jr.
Yep.
You're the one that pointed that out earlier.
Yep.
Let's take a look at this post. It's from Dr. Simon Godek. It's Uncomfortable Truth. JFK wanted to strip the CIA of its autonomy. Force AIPAC, that's AIPAC, formerly AZC. That is the Israeli PAC that's in the U.S. government, to register as a foreign agent, block Israel's nuclear ambitions, and challenge the Federal Reserve's grip on U.S. currency. That's why he was assassinated. Well, that's this guy's opinion. We don't actually know. He's citing some documents there, probably too small for us to read. But a lot of this stuff's going to come through X. And I'm curious to see what we find. That's a lot of documents, man. This is, I don't know. So what I don't want to happen, and because there are bad groups in there are bad people, bad apples in every group.
100%.
America's support for Israel should not waver.
No.
We must support the people of Israel. We must support and pray for them. There are bad apples in every nation.
Yes, there are.
And so maybe that's something that could have happened. We don't know. Like you said, I don't really want to comment on things that we don't know for sure.
Right.
But the fact remains this, that as long as our allies, like Israel, remain close, this nation will continue to be blessed. I know people will have a hard time hearing that because of what's happening in Gaza and all that stuff. But the point is that Israel is our ally from biblical history.
Yep.
And it must remain the same.
Yep, it's a great point you make. There are people in government and in business and in the private world that do bad things. That doesn't make everybody in government bad. That doesn't make every nation bad. That doesn't make every individual bad. People do bad things, and that tarnishes the groups that they're part of.
Yeah.
Whether it's a country, a business, a government, an agency, so that's the tough one.
Right.
And we see that there's so many examples of that where somebody does something bad and then we assign that behavior to an entire group. That one's tough.
Yeah.
Because then that's exactly what happens when we're prejudged. Right? We walk into a situation, well, you're this, and therefore your opinion doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's a tough situation to be in.
That is very tough. Very tough. Well, we are blasting through time. I got some questions I want to ask you.
Yeah,
Let's do it. So let's let our audience know who you truly are, and I want to ask these questions based off of just your heart, because we didn't even get into faith. Like, what's your faith testimony? Should we go there?
We can, sure. Yeah.
Well, when did you experience God really truly for the first time?
It's hard to equate it to a first time.
Okay.
Although I've always felt like there were times in my life where God was present and I just didn't know, I didn't really realize it. Sometimes I look back and I'm thinking, man, God was right there with me.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't know it at the time, or I wasn't aware of it at the time. I'll tell you, my testimony is, without question, I could parallel it to the footprints in the sand.
Okay.
Those times when you thought you were alone.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't alone.
Wow.
I wasn't alone.
Wow.
God was there with me. And maybe he didn't show up with a Brinks truck full of money, right? But I wasn't alone, right?
Yeah.
And so I look back on that. So it's hard for me to say I had one moment of epiphany where, God revealed himself to me. I look back and I go, God's been there the whole time.
Wow.
Right. And now, with that awareness, now I am more confidently engaged with God. I more confidently pray. I more confidently ask for guidance. But I also more confidently proceed in directions I think are appropriate. And I look for God's influence.
Good.
Like, help me. I'm going to move this path. And if I'm wrong, close the door. If I'm right, keep the door open.
So man, I love that, because something I personally, it's weird because, I've been just raised in the faith. That's all I've ever
Sure.
known. We've had our ups and downs and things. But truly being led by the Holy Spirit is something very special and something so critical in our lives.
Yep.
Because we get in our own ways, right? Our ideas are not God's ideas. Our thoughts are not His thoughts. So why do we use them?
Right.
If we could just follow the guiding of His Spirit, the Holy Spirit, everything else would be taken care of. It's like that scripture that says that seek first the kingdom of God and all of His righteousness, and then everything else will be added. He's literally telling us, seek Him and He'll take care of everything else. Worry about His stuff and He'll take care of our stuff.
Yep.
And I'm really grasping that idea, and I love that you just said that, because it's kind of been a rehearsal of mine.
Yeah.
Is to make sure that I'm doing what He wills me to do or allows me to do. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. When I was a really young kid, here's one little epiphany, an anecdote. When I was a little kid and I would do something that was not good, right? Get in trouble for it. I used to think, well, that wasn't me. God made me do it.
Yeah.
And then I realized later, I had that sort of thought. Finally, I was like, no, I'm pretty much, that was me.
Right.
was me.
Yeah.
And I do remember having some points in life where I took ownership, where I realized, God's out there and God is there with me and God is there to assist me. But at the end of the day, it was me that had to make the decision.
That's right.
Right?
That's
so
right.
God's not, He didn't make me do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
But God's there to help me.
Right.
Right? When I call on Him, when I need that North Star of guidance, right?
Right.
God's there, right? But I'm the one that does it. I'm
That's
the one
true.
that does it. We carry it.
That's true.
Right? I was speaking with a friend yesterday who was struggling with a little bit of a challenge. And one sort of piece of counsel that I provided was that they were concerned about a particular door staying open, that they would continue to have this opportunity. And the feedback I provided was like, look, sometimes we ask God for things and we look for Him to open doors for us.
Yeah.
But one of the things that God does, I believe, on a regular basis, and we don't give Him enough credit for it, is that God closes doors.
That's right.
And a closed door, when you get to it, is an opportunity to knock. But a closed door, or a door that might close when you get there, might be God saying, you know what? You need to pick a different direction.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're so afraid of change. We're so afraid of doing something different than what we've done in the past that we will continue to try and get through a closed door.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Sometimes, it's, I think, and I have to reflect back, there's a song called Unanswered Prayers. That is a true message.
Yeah, that is.
Right?
That is.
There's lots of times when God says, I hear your prayer. You're not asking for the right thing. So I'm not going to help you get there.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we all have to realize that sometimes some doors are closed for a reason.
Right,
and that's okay.
right.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. It's so funny because someone asked me the other day, they said, what is the, they're asking about their reading plan for the Bible. And I said, that's a good question. Because you can go anywhere. She was telling me, well, I like to read the book of Proverbs, do one chapter a month for the 31 days of the month. And I said, well, why don't you start with the Gospels of Jesus? Because He's really given a blueprint for life on how to live our lives. And His testimony is fairly short. His testimony is basically 3 years of ministry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he didn't live a life of ministry that spanned 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
There's 18 years of His life we didn't even hear about.
Yeah.
The Jewish tradition is he goes to the bar mitzvah and becomes a man. But from that point on, we don't even know, we don't hear about him growing a beard, growing that, tall and stout or whatever it is. We didn't hear anything. We just find out that he comes and shows up on the scene and is being used by God in tremendous and miraculous ways. And I love what he says, because one of the things that happened in the book of John, chapter 5, verse 30, is he goes to the pool of Bethesda, and people are jumping in the pool to get healed by the angel that stirs the water. But there's a lame man that can't get in the water. Jesus comes, and it's actually on the Sabbath. And Jewish law is you don't perform miracles, you don't work, you rest on the Sabbath. But here comes Jesus, kind of breaking up the norms of society and all that's been put out for him. And he heals this man. He says, do you want to be healed? He's asking this man about his will. Does he want to be healed? And so the man says, yes, I want to be healed. So now he has the will to be healed. Yeah. Jesus says, then take up your bed and walk. Instantly healed. Yep. Starts this huge controversy, right? Because he healed on the Sabbath. And they're asking him, they're probing him, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? Why are you healing on the Sabbath? Yeah. You know what Jesus tells him? He says, I don't do it based off my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me. Yeah. So, yes, we have our own will, but it's still guided by the will of God. Yeah. And that's what Jesus was showing us. I tell people this all the time. Jonah, when you ask me, well, doesn't God give you a free will to do what you want? Yeah, he gives you a free will to do what you want. But Jonah had his own free will. And Jonah got free willied. He got swallowed by a whale. Yeah. Because he wanted to do what he wanted to do. Yeah. But God's going to do his will in your life, whether you like it or not. Yeah, we'll always end up doing the will of God. But it's just, are we in for the ride or are we not? Are we going to do it with God or are we going to do it without? Absolutely. That yields different results. It does. It does. And doing things for the right reasons. Yeah. In our heart. Yeah. Or, you know, it's interesting because people are motivated by a lot of different things. They are. And if we eliminate, for lack of a better term, material motivations, and we do the right things because it's the right thing to do, yeah, without looking for reward, without looking for benefit, and without looking for credit. Yeah. And we just do it because it's the right thing to do, which, by the way, is not fight. Right? Because there's a lot of people and groups out there that say, well, I'm doing the right thing and I've got to fight for it. If you got to fight for it, you're seeking attention. Right. Yeah. You know, nowhere in the Bible do I recall reading that Jesus said, hey, gather around while I do this miracle. Yeah, he just did. I don't recall that occurring. No. There were a lot of individual relationships. That's right. That's good. Yeah, so I always think that that's an important piece. It's an individual relationship that we have. You know, yeah, that's so good, so good. Let me ask you a few questions. Please. What if you could preach one sermon to the whole world, what would it be? What would be your message? What is Eric Sanderson's message? There's a couple of words that'll come together here. Yeah. Love, compassion, and not judgment. It's the message of Christ. It is. That's good. 100%. I love that. That's what Jesus asked us to do. Yeah. You mentioned about if you could guide somebody on their biblical journey. If I were to advocate for anything, I'm not a pastor. If I was a pastor, the first thing is that read the stuff in red. Yeah. Start with that. That's good. That's very good. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. Yeah. That's all that matters. Yeah. It really is. What did he ask us to do? What did he ask us to do? I love that. That's so good. Okay, so what's one moment in your life when you knew God was real? Again, it was more of the realization reflecting back on circumstances. It was the footprints. It was being in situations that I got out of, that I shouldn't have got out of, and looking back later and saying there was no way I should have lived through that. There's no way I should have found a path. And I'll be honest, I'm very blessed in my life. I mean, I have a wonderful work. I love what I do. I have phenomenal clients. I have a beautiful wife who's amazingly gifted in what she does. And I have more blessings than I deserve. Wow. And I can only look at that as, somewhere I'm grateful. I think God must see something in me, and he affords me these blessings. Amen. And I'm really eternally grateful for that. It's hard to describe one moment. Good. It's just, hey, I can't be here now without God. Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. If Jesus were sitting at this table, what's one question you think you'd ask him? Oh, that's I put you on the spot. That's good. It's all right. What would I ask him? What can I do to help? Wow. That's a huge question. Huge. You ready to hear his answer? You think you are? You bet. Yeah? It's because his answer is the truth. And whether it's something that I liked or disliked, it's his intent Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And what can I do to help? How can I
Man.
help serve?
That's such a good answer, bro. Like, that's so good. Oh my gosh. I'd be afraid to hear what he'd tell me. He'd say, go to the Congo and rescue Christians.
Then I would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't think twice. If Jesus said, "This is what I want you to do," I'll do it.
Wow.
But,
Yeah. What do you
who
do?
else would I follow direction from?
Yeah, yeah. He'll take care of the rest.
He'll take care of the rest.
Man, that's so good. I love that. All right, let's do some political and cultural questions.
Okay.
What's the biggest threat to America today in your mind?
Media.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We're actually talking to people in the media, you and I.
Yeah.
that
I mean,
are-
we're being media right now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's such a broad spectrum of thoughts, opinions, and views. And media is, we consume media at such a voracious level that we consume more than we can meaningfully interpret and digest. And
Yeah.
so we're obese with media.
Yeah, and it's not good consumption at all.
It's not good consumption,
No.
and not all media is good.
No.
So
No, that's totally. So what would you say to people, because you and I are thinking about working together in some, expanding this show in different ways. A lot of complaints I hear is like, it's so saturated. But when you look at, I truly believe that everybody has an audience. Everybody has a message, but that audience just needs to hear that message. Once those people hear, your audience hears your message, they'll come.
Yeah.
It's just like the message of Christ. You said he didn't like make announcements and social media posts that he's going to be preaching on the mounts, right? It's just he had a message and people came.
that's right.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we have a message, people are going to come, and they are coming.
Yeah.
God's opening so many doors, by the way. It's crazy.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So-
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
So in one sentence, define Christian conservatism. It doesn't have to be one sentence, but
Sure.
your best description.
You know, I think Christian conservatism, living out, behaving according to God's wishes for us,
Yeah.
and to follow Jesus' message.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole lot to unpack there. I
Sure.
recognize that, but that's like in a few words. Again, I go back to, what did he say? What was it? What guidance? And so much of it was in parables and stories. Some of it was very direct, right?
Right.
But some of it was in parables and metaphors and things that we needed to contemplate and digest. But his overarching message is resounding. It is clear without question. It is love one another,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is the core message to all of it.
Yeah.
Stop judging people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Care for your fellow man
Right.
and woman, care
Right.
for each other, love one another. That's just, nothing is more important than that. That to me is the definition of Christian conservatism. I almost get a little stuck on the whole conservative word.
Yeah,
What does that mean? That's a
I know.
political term.
It is.
Right?
It
So
is.
it's almost a loaded political term. It's what's the right way to live? How do
Yeah.
we engage? Now, it just so happens that a lot of our Christian values align with conservatism.
Right,
Right?
right.
And so that's my belief, is that that's where that ties in. So I believe that the conservative political position is more appropriately aligned with Christian values.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I see it. And I believe that the conservative position more openly embraces Christian values, honors them, lifts them up, and we use them to guide decisions, and we should use those to guide decisions. And the key thing is the humility. The
Right.
humility of asking God for guidance, asking Jesus to continue to forgive us, to help us in our path.
I love that because it really does come down to humility. I think that's the hardest part for especially Americans to figure out, because we're always on this like uphill battle to fight for our position, to fight for to be known, to be seen. It's just the culture of America's society today. But to have a humble heart and a humble spirit is just the ultimate guide to success.
It is.
It starts there. It starts with humility. It starts with being kind to others, being loving, having compassion, and not stepping on your brother or sister to get where you need to go, but lifting them up first.
Yep.
Eric, man, this was great.
This is awesome. I really appreciate the time.
Time like
Wonderful.
flew,
I
didn't
know
it? It's already
did.
over an
Zipped right
hour.
by.
We're like, let's do 40
Really?
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're like,
Well, we'll
fine.
have to do it again.
We're definitely going to do this
Yeah,
again.
I'd love it.
I want you all, like the audience that's watching or that's rewatching this episode, pray for the Political Pulpit. We're trying to expand in a special way. We do need our own studio. We're thankful for Redeemer Apostolic Church, who's allowed us their beautiful stage and screen and all the things that we use. But we need our own studio. So we're looking, searching, and praying for a spot where we can bring so much new content. We have in-person interviews like this that we want to do, multiple studios. We have other talent that wants to come in and to be part of this. We have faith, education, business, politics. What am I missing? Oh, health and wellness.
Health and wellness.
We got to do health and wellness. Yep. And so visit us at www.politicalpulpit.com/partners. You can donate a one-time donation there, or you can become a monthly subscriber to help us get the message out. You can help us expand this net. We're only like 5 months old. And so,
we're killing it.
We're doing great, I think. God's doing amazing. This, I just truly feel this is more of a ministry than it is a media company. And I'm treating it that way. And just like you said, God's just doing crazy things because we're trusting Him first. And so we appreciate you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Eric Sanderson, he's going to have his own show. Just watch the Eric Sanderson Show. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.